Hey, welcome back, survivalists. So I've got some possibly good news to report on the coronavirus, and then a whole bunch of kind of scary stories to also report on the coronavirus. So let's jump online to this website that shows us how many reported cases there are. And as you can see, we're up to 43,000 reported cases. That is up since the last video that I made, obviously. And we just reached over 1,000 deaths. So that's not the good news. That's definitely not great. The good news is that the rate of spread may be decreasing right now. If you remember in my last video, I said that there's an obvious trend that the number of cases was doubling every 3 days. Well, it looks like that trend has slowed down. It's more, right now, it's still doubling, but it's like 5 days or so. So let's just take a look here. If you're on this website, you can't look at the very last number, which is today's date, because they don't know what today's numbers are, so this last one's never accurate. But if we look here on the 10th, we had 42,300 cases. If we go back, how far back do we need to go until we're about half of that? See, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. So about 7 days. So it took about 7 days for that to double, whereas before it was taking about 3 days to double. Now, this could be a sign that the spread is going to start slowing down and we may peak at some point and then kind of level off. But what my suspicion is that this is the result of the Wuhan quarantine, of China locking down those 11 million citizens in their city and not allowing anybody to leave or enter, and from all of these different airlines that have stopped all flights from China. So this may be what we're seeing in this data, that the actions that they took 1 to 2 weeks ago, we're now seeing a slow in the rate of growth. But I think that these measures are obviously just going to slow down the rate of growth. It's not going to stop it at all, because it's obviously beyond China's borders now. It's all throughout, it's in Russia, it's in the Philippines, it's all throughout Japan, and all throughout Asia, and Europe, and even in North America. And what you need to keep in mind is that there's 43,000 cases that emerged from just one single case about 2 months ago. Back in December, I think, was the first reported case, and that's turned into 43,000 cases. So any one of these individual cases could then turn into thousands more. I still am very concerned that the rate is going to really start ramping back up, especially as this gets spread into poorer nations like Thailand and the Philippines and India. And if it makes its way to Africa, you know, again, that's just going to be bad news. They are not going to be able to quarantine 11 million people. You know, once it gets to these poorer nations that don't have the same resources as China and America, it is just going to spread like wildfire. So this is definitely something that I am keeping an eye on, is what the rate of the growth is. And yeah, that's the positive news, is it may be slowing down. We need to keep watching this and see if that trend continues. So I do have a few articles I want to cover today as well. So the coronavirus finally got an official name, and the name is COVID-19. So if you don't know, coronavirus is actually a whole family of viruses, and novel coronavirus means that it's a new strand. Novel just means new. So they've actually come up with an official name for this, and this is the name that they're going to write in the history books, just like SARS, is COVID-19. And what that stands for is coronavirus disease, discovered in 2019. So it's probably going to take a while for everybody to start calling it COVID-19. I know for a long time people are calling it the Wuhan virus, and then novel coronavirus, and then there's a few other acronyms for it. So COVID-19 is going to be the official name of this moving forward. So if we move over, this is really concerning that a Japanese researchers or Chinese officials have said the virus can infect people via airborne transmission. So we thought that it was very similar to the flu, that, you know, you get it on your hands and then you touch your face and that's how you get the virus. But no, this means you could just be in the same room as somebody who has this virus, and just by them talking and speaking and maybe sneezing or coughing, just through airborne transmission, it can infect the entire room. And we already know that this virus is asymptomatic. So you don't have to be even coughing and sneezing or even showing any symptoms. You can still have it, and then you can transmit it, and just through the air. That is so freaking scary. Like, that is really, really concerning. That's a big red flag right there, man. Yeah, just the fact that it's asymptomatic and it can be spread airborne, and we have no vaccine for this is really pretty concerning to me. But let's move along. So I found this interesting. The Fed chairman says the coronavirus could hurt the global economy. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on Tuesday warned Congress that the coronavirus could hurt the global economy. So I talked about this in my last video, that when this thing starts spreading to these third world countries that are just not prepared for it, it is going to have devastating effects. And we already have a lot of airlines that have stopped all flights in and out of China. There is going to become a time when the international trade just kind of grinds to a halt, that we don't want anything coming from China, and none of these countries want anything coming from China, and that we may not want any imports from, the Philippines or India or Africa or any of these countries, or if they do come in, maybe we have to quarantine an entire ship. It is really going to have devastating effects on the global economy, not just the US. If you think of the city of Wuhan, for example, their entire economy is just grinded to a halt. They can't have any imports or exports. Nobody's leaving their homes. Nobody's operating the businesses anymore. Like, that little isolated city is just grinded to a halt. But that could happen to entire countries. A lot of these countries that their economy is dependent on exporting to larger economies like the US and China, once we shut all our ports and don't accept any imports from them, those individual smaller countries' economies are just going to be devastated. And then there's going to be tons of businesses in the US and China and Europe that depend on those imports, and they're going to be devastated as well. So, I absolutely see it, and it looks like the Federal Reserve Chairman also sees this future. So this one caught my eye as well. Chinese officials scramble to keep food flowing to cities on lockdown. So the city of Wuhan, 11 million people, and the Chinese government has to step in just to provide food to those people. Those people have been on quarantine for going on 2 weeks now. And like many people do not want to leave their homes because they don't want to get infected, but they're running out of food, and the city as a whole is running out of food. And it's a major challenge for the Chinese government and the military to bring enough food in for these 11 million people. And I tell you, it's the people who are not prepared and do not have enough food in their homes and go into these different stores that the military is providing food for and potentially expose themselves because they were not prepared and they did not have enough food that they could shelter in place for long enough. And then moving along, I found this video from Senator Tom Cotton. It's him talking to military generals, and this is actually about a week ago. And he's already about a week ago talking about stopping all flights from China to the US, like stopping all imports, stopping all flights from China. And what's interesting about this is, there's a lot of rumors going around that the coronavirus could be engineered by the Chinese government. He's hinting at that in this video. And he's also hinting that he doesn't believe the Chinese numbers, that he thinks that they're lying to us about the number of reported cases, because he cites that they lied to us about SARS. And he talks about in this video how this narrative that it emerged from a food market, he thinks that's all nonsense. So let me just play just a little clip here of him talking to the generals and talking about how he wants to shut down all flights or all traffic at all from China and from Asia, really. And I'll have a link to this video at the end as well if you want to find it. Let's just take a look at this clip here.
This coronavirus is a catastrophe on the scale of Chernobyl for China. But actually, it's probably worse than Chernobyl, which was localized in its effect. The coronavirus could result in a global pandemic. While you were all sleeping overnight, the number of diagnosed cases in China increased by 30%. Now, let me be clear, that's not new cases, that is just newly admitted cases. It is probably several orders of magnitude higher than that. Also, while you were sleeping, China now has its entire border with Russia closed. 2,600 miles, Russia has closed that border. El Al has shut down travel between Israel and China. Air France has shut down travel between China and France. And that's in addition to all the other countries that have already shut down travel. From what we know so far, and there's still many unknowns, this virus could have both a long incubation period, as much as 14 days, and individuals could be contagious while asymptomatic, which was not the case with SARS in 2003. Furthermore, from some cases, it appears that the virus could be aerosolized, which means it doesn't require the kind of contact that you have with, say, a married couple kissing each other or a family living in close quarters in a hotel or apartment, but rather the distances we are all sitting apart right now. Yet China is still lying about all of this. They've been lying about it from the very beginning, and you don't need their history of lying about SARS in 2003, though it is relevant here. You just have to see what's happened over the last 2 months. We now know that the first case manifested no later than December 1, even though China didn't reveal it to the WHO until a month later on December 31st, when they continued to hide it from their own citizens. And they continued to say that it had been contained inside Wuhan.
So he's talking to the military generals, asking, how are they prepared in these different regions of the world, especially in Africa. And it's not good. They say, no, this would devastate that area. And you notice how he calls this a pandemic. And he says that this is worse than Chernobyl. And this is a pretty concerning video to watch. This is somebody who is getting classified briefings, and now he's holding this public hearing, asking the generals, are they prepared? Hey, so make sure you guys subscribe to stay updated on the coronavirus and any news that is breaking about it. And if you guys want to watch that video from Senator Cotton talking to the generals, it's a little concerning watching him, because this is somebody who's getting classified briefings on this topic at the highest level, and he is very, very concerned about this. So I think we all really need to start taking this serious. And I'll see you guys on my next update.